Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first launch of the So Ready speaker series led by YWCA South Florida and funded by the Children's Trust here in Miami-Dade. I am so pleased to offer this new amazing thing that is part of a larger So Ready initiative where YWCA has convened various community partners and resources to improve the lives of children and families in Miami through exploring and supporting the social emotional wellness and racial equity, diversity, and inclusion work for trust-funded providers and other children's and family services provider across Miami-Dade County. So this is just one of the things that you've seen. You may have also seen some of our streaming mindfulness sessions. And for those who are funded by the Trust, we have a whole slew of things available to you through Trust Academy. And so you'll be receiving some links and information about that after today's session. So today we're excited to welcome you because this is the So Ready Speaker Series. And what this is this is going to be a regular installment from YWCA that is available to the wider community that brings experts, both local and from beyond, to talk about and support our own personal practices, as well as services that we're able to provide, our own So Ready. So that's what the So and the Ready stand for: social emotional wellness, racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. I'm excited today to introduce you to my friend, Micah Marie Johnson, to be our first speaker for today. As you may have seen in our teasers, we're going to do some wordsmithing. We're going to do some reflection. It's going to be an interactive and really rewarding session. Micah Marie Johnson is a multifaceted, dynamic leader and creative force based here in Miami-Dade. She's known for her Curious Micah Guides platform, which fosters creativity, community building, and social engagement, featuring Miami guides, people, places, things, and ideas emerging from South Florida. Micah is active on the Executive Planning Committee for Leadership Miami, and she is also an executive leader for the Miami Poetry Club. In her spare time, she is the COO of Orthopedic Radiology Specialists, a Miami-based teleradiology group that collaborates with folks throughout the county or country. Personally, she's an accomplished writer and performer and has performed at venues such as the Adrian Arch Center and the Olympia Theater, and her writing has been published in the Pierian Journal, SWWIM's collaboration with FIU, Indie Earth, O Miami, and more. Recently, Micah was honored with the title of Poet Laureate for the Coral Springs Festival of the Arts this year, where she performed her award-winning poem, As Seen on Backroads Unseen. So I'm pleased to introduce you to Micah, who will tell you a little bit more about what we're doing today and launch us into this amazing session. Micah?
Thank you so much. I appreciate the introduction. Thank you again for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. Good afternoon, or maybe morning to some people, depending on where you are. I'm Micah Marie Johnson, and yes, I'm very excited to be here at the YWCA Speaker Series. Today, we're going to explore the transformative power of poetry, determination, and self-care. So I have created a presentation that I'd like to share along with the words that I'm going to speak. So I will be pulling that up in just a moment. As Angeline mentioned, this will be interactive, so there will be time for some writing. If you happen to have paper and pen or your cell phone handy, those types of things, if you need something to write with, prepare that now. You'll need it a little bit later on. But if you also want to take notes on what we're discussing today, it would also be handy to have. Okay, so give me just a moment. I'm going to pull this up for you. Okay, so unlocking the power of poetry. This is a guide that I've created and I'm excited to share with you all today. So I want to get you thinking about preparing yourself to journey into the power of poetry. With poetry, we have the ability to craft words that can serve as a tool for healing, self-reflection, empowerment. It's also something that can be really helpful for self-care and exploring your expression. And it's a way to continue your personal growth and also personal resilience. So who am I? I'm Micah Marie Johnson. You already heard a little bit about me. I'm a lifelong poet. I have been writing poetry since I cannot even remember. I grew up here in Florida. I grew up in a small town. I grew up with not a lot of art, a lot of accessibility to creativity. And it was definitely not always easy to find ways to express myself personally. And that is why I believe that I found poetry so young. It was a way for me to kind of make sense of what was going on in the world. And at first, it started out as something that was really just for myself. And then as I grew, it continued to be something that I wanted to share with others. And I wanted to hear from others. I wanted to connect with people on a more emotional way. I think that poetry is a way to describe the way that the world works on an emotional sense. And so I think that's what I use poetry for. And I'm able to, share that with others. With the nonprofit that I work with, which is Miami Poetry Club, Miami Poetry Club offers inclusive, accessible poetry education and events to amplify and enrich the lives of Miamians through the transformational power of writing and community. Through that, I've been able to offer programming, writing workshops, performance workshops, and things like that. Things that I didn't have personally when I was growing up and would have been something that would have been thrilling. We offer these mostly for adults, but we do have programming for children as well. And I kind of think of it as being able to provide something to the children that couldn't experience it like I did later on in life. But now we really try to do a little bbit of everything for the community at large. So the power of poetry. Let's talk about it. So poetry has the unique ability to help us express and process our emotions. It can serve as a powerful tool for healing. It can provide comfort, clarity, catharsis. So when we write about our experience, sometimes just sitting down and kind of writing it out is a way to begin to express the complex feelings. It's a time to begin to look into our innermost world. And when we're able to do those things, it can also be incredibly empowering because it offers people an avenue to use their voice. So there's lots of different types of poems and there's lots of different types of forms. And this is an acrostic poem. So an acrostic poem is basically taking a word and using the first letter of each letter in the word to create a poem. So this is a poem I wrote about poetry. And I'm going to read it out loud to you. Poetry by me, Micah Johnson. Perception can be a daunting wall to climb, often casting shadows on my words in slant rhymes. Expressing the depths of my soul's control, true understanding isn't easy for others to firmly hold. Reflecting truths in these stanzas, hoping they find their way, yearning for true connection as emotions and thoughts sway. So this poem is about that feeling of how can I express myself so people understand what I'm trying to get at? Will people understand me in life? And I believe poetry is a way to get there. So how does poetry make an impact? It creates personal insight. So poetry serves as a versatile and impactful tool for personal growth and emotional well-being. It's a place to pause, to gain insight and empowerment for those who choose to engage in it. So poetry is not just a literary art form, but it's a tool for personal transformation. So let's get into fact and fiction about poetry. There's a lot floating around there about poems. Often when I talk to people who haven't had a lot of poetry in their life, often it's because they've purposely avoided it. So let's talk about poetry. Poetry must rhyme. Not all poems need to rhyme. Free verse poetry, for example, relies on natural cadence and rhythm. So that natural rhythm can come from the person writing it, the person reading it, and sometimes form can kind of help dictate that. But poems don't have to rhyme, but they definitely can. A lot of my poems rhyme for fun. It's something I like to explore personally, but then the other half of them absolutely do not rhyme at all. Poetry is always complex. While some poems can be complex, many are just very easy and straightforward to understand. There's something that in the poetry world they call doing the work. So the work is writing the poem, and then the other part of work is the person reading the poem understanding the poem. And that can be like a little puzzle sometimes. People spend hours, dissecting poetry, but not every poem needs to be that way. Poems can really just be straightforward and tell you exactly what it means. Poetry is only for the elite. Poetry is open to everyone, regardless of education or background. Poetry must follow strict rules. While some poetry forms definitely have rules, and that structure can actually make it very fun to write once you get into it, free verse has no strict form rules. You can just write however you see fit, line breaks, commas, colons, punctuation, almost anything goes really in that realm. And poetry is always serious. Poetry can be lighthearted and humorous, can be celebratory, it can explore every emotion that you can think of. So poetic resilience, the intersection of poetry, determination, and self-care. Let's skip ahead. Through poetry, it's a moment of self-reflection. So once people start writing, it's a way to clarify your intentions. Often when I'm writing, I will write a lot of things. And once I'm done with it, I'll read it out loud and I'll say, you know what? That's not how I feel at all. And sometimes it's really empowering just to write everything that's in your head out and then be able to look at it, critically and say, do I feel this way? Is this important to me? Is this how I really feel inside? Or did I just need to release these feelings to understand how I feel? So that's a great way to start kind of reflecting on what you think by being able to clarify your intentions. This is something that I like to do with poetry, which is goal setting. So in poetry, you can actually write goals out through a poem. So you could think about goal setting like, I want to get better at poetry. I want to, be a better writer, which is great. But you could also write poems about your goals, about your dreams, about your aspirations. And I think that's something that is really interesting to explore with poetry, and it helps kind of organize yourself in a different way. And then determination, writing about the perseverance and resilience, writing about our own experiences. Poetry, often reflects the human experience. Sometimes poems are not about humans, but it's humans writing poems to other humans. So, those are going to include our struggles, our triumphs. And by immersing ourselves in poetry, we can find inspiration and motivation to persevere through those challenges. So we talked a little bit about this. This is really just a reminder of that. Poetry can lead to self-awareness and self-acceptance, encouraging individuals to explore their innermost thoughts. This was the little bit more about the goal setting. To write a poem centered around goals as a theme, it can really structure a way to find a process of goal setting in that way, which I think is very fun and unique way to use poetry. And then, poetry can empower individuals. So if you're able to share your voice, it can be a catalyst for personal and communal empowerment. Also, to listen to other people's voices can be very empowering because you're able to get different perspectives of how other people find ways to be determined in their lives. So a famous poem by Maya Angelou, Still I Rise. This is an iconic poem that celebrates the resilience of human spirit in the face of adversity. And this is a line that particularly stands out to me. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I rise. So despite these challenges, the speaker in the poem, their declaration is that they will rise like air in both poetic and empowering ways, showing a strong determination to overcome their diversity. So how can poetry become a self-care practice? Well, creating a self-care practice is very important. We live in the modern age of everything, everywhere, all at once. And poetry can be a time to reflect on our own life and our own experiences that we can find little ways to carve out to, give us some peace and some centered feelings. And these are a couple ways you can start to think about this. One is reading regularly. And this doesn't have to be big books. This could be little, small poems, things like this. Just set time each day or week to read a little bit of poetry to uplift, unwind, and even reflect. So you could maybe put a book by your bed, pick it up before you get out of bed and, read a couple lines, and then it's there for you at night. You can pick it up, turn off the devices, and then perhaps reflect on poetry. There's all different kinds of poetry books to read, all different types of people who write poetry. So this is a great way to start kind of getting connected to what's out there. And then the second one is create a poetry journal. So this is a great place to even write down poems that you've maybe found from other authors that you might be really inspired by or even perplexed by, because sometimes we're inspired in multiple ways. Sometimes you're inspired to think of more, but other times it's inspired to consider, how could life be this way or that way? And I think that can be very impactful, but it's also a place to write down your own thoughts. And these poetry journals don't have to be for anyone, and it doesn't have to make sense to anyone, but it could just be a word that pops in your mind. And that word could become a couple lines, could become a sentence, but it's something there just to, start the practice of kind of going in and thinking about our own lives. And you could also pair poetry with other self-care activities like meditation, yoga, nature walks. Recently, I had lunch and I had my notebook with me, and I decided to write a poem about eating lunch. And that felt really nice after having a delicious meal. So there are opportunities to kind of carve it out in random places throughout your day. So by integrating poetry into your self-care routine, you can nurture your emotional well-being, gain new insights, and cultivate a deeper appreciation for the beauty of language and expression. And poetry can be for joy, right? So poetry has the power to evoke joy and laughter through playful language and imagery. Reading or writing humorous poems can uplift spirits and bring moments of, lightness or joy to your day. And this really shows the diversity and the range of expressions with poetry. Often I hear people who I speak to about poetry tell me that they use it in a cathartic way. They like to write cathartically. They like to write to explore themes of maybe experience that was maybe more traumatic, to kind of make sense of different things that have happened in their own lives, or to understand how those things can come to be by reading other people's works. So this can be a way to process and heal. It's also something that can be very accessible. Not everyone has access to all forms of maybe formal therapy for one reason or the other. And this could be a way for, someone to start that process for themselves internally. Celebrating life moments. Poetry allows us to celebrate even the small, mundane, seemingly fleeting moments like doing the laundry or checking the mail. That doesn't always seem like something to celebrate, but maybe there's a nice letter in the mail. Maybe there's a flyer with a deal of something you wanted to buy, and that can feel like a celebration for someone. But it's also to celebrate those big milestones, those types of things. Also a great time to maybe write a poem or reflect on those things. But it's not just about the big things. It can be about something small, like someone handing you a sweater when you're cold. That is a small moment, and that could be a celebration if your hands are freezing and someone hands you, a sweater in your time of need. Grief and loss. This is also something that can kind of help people move through challenging moments in their life. Writing or reading poems about loss and remembrance can be a way to honor those that we've lost in our lives, to celebrate those, or even if we've had maybe a complex relationship with somebody in that way of grief or loss, something that's changed in our life, can be a way to begin to cope with those things, or at least to make sense of it in some way. And just blowing off steam. Had a long day, things are pent up, write a couple words down. It's a way to get out anger, perhaps, or frustration in a constructive way. It can alleviate stress and kind of promote that expression where maybe you don't have the chance to do it in the moment. Maybe you're driving in traffic, somebody cut you off, you get home, you can write a poem about it. So this is a poem by Shel Silverstein. And I wanted to read this poem to you really quickly, and tell me how maybe you think about how you feel after you hear it from me. So, Shel Silverstein, sick. I cannot go to school today, said little Peggy Ann McKay. I have the measles and the mumps, a gash, a rash, and purple bumps. My mouth is wet, my throat is dry. I'm going blind in my right eye. My tonsils are as big as rocks. I've counted 16 chicken pox. And there's one more, that's 17. And don't you think my face looks green? My leg is cut, my eyes are blue. It might be the isthmatic flu. I cough, I sneeze and gasp and choke. I'm sure that my left leg is broke. My hip hurts when I move my chin. My belly button's caving in. My back is wrenched, my ankle sprained. My appendix pains each time it rains. My nose is cold, my toes are numb. I have a sliver in my thumb. My neck is stiff, my voice is weak. I hardly whisper when I speak. My tongue is filling up my mouth. I think my hair is falling out. My elbows bent, my spines ain't straight. My temperature is 108. My brain is shrunk, I cannot hear. There's a hole inside my ear. I have a hangnail, and my heart is, what? What's that? What's that you say? You say today is Saturday? Goodbye, I'm going out to play. So, so that's just a fun poem. I think, I don't know, I've had moments in my day where I'm like, oh, everything feels like it's going wrong, and or I don't want to be in this place. And but this is a really playful way of maybe even kind of talking about our own personal feelings about our day going bad, or how we don't want to be in a place. But also there's that nice twist in the end where we realize that the speaker in the poem is just trying to get out of school. And sometimes we all feel that way. We want a way to escape and want to do something else. But I think poetry has that fun way of kind of leading you somewhere and then kind of turning it on its head and giving you a nice twist. And I think this poem does it really effectively. Okay. So the next part is doing a little bit of writing. So I want to suggest a little writing exercise. And the exercise is to reflect on a moment when you overcame a challenge or adversity. Okay. And first, do a little bit of reflection. So this could be something, like we mentioned, it could be something simple, perhaps mundane. It could be something huge, something that spent years of your life, happening. It could be anything. It could be anything in sort of inside of that range. Okay, so don't limit yourself to one experience. You could write about multiple if you want, but it doesn't have to be huge. It could be something really simple, like you found your keys, or you graduated college, it could be anything. And then ask yourself this question: how did you find the strength to persevere? during this challenge or adversity. Okay, so the next slide, we'll just talk a little bit how to start this writing exercise. So often when I write, if I give myself a huge task of writing about something, it can feel very heavy. It could feel like, I don't want to sit at my desk right now. I want to go outside and play. Even though I want to write about this thing, maybe I'm trying to run away from it for some reason. So I like to give myself little writing exercises to ground myself first. So the first idea is to write a list of words or short phrases. So you can do this by creating a word bank of ideas. So on one page, start to brainstorm some ideas. So think of words that are related to overcoming challenges, perhaps reflect on emotions you felt, what actions did you take to overcome this challenge, include any words that reflect your personal experience. Okay, so we'll take about 5 minutes to create a word bank. Then after that, we'll talk about the next portion, which has to do with free writing. So for the next 5 minutes, I will be quiet while we think a little, and I will write as well. Okay, so I think that's been about 5 minutes. So at this point, you should probably have a reasonable size list. I mean, it depends. Sometimes it takes me a little bit of time to start my list. Maybe the first minute I might not write anything. Depending on how you like to write lists, you might maybe just write word after word. Maybe you start writing sentences or like 3 words. Maybe you start drawing little pictures. Sometimes that's what I do to get myself into the moment of what I'm trying to think about. I did draw some little squiggles on mine, as well as words and phrases. So the next part is my favorite part, which is free writing. So free writing is awesome because it's a no judgment zone. The idea of free writing is to start writing. You don't have to worry about rhyme or structure. You can just let words flow from your page. So some writers, they like to write in forms. You don't need to do that. Often I just write long, meandering words and phrases and sentences. Okay. So don't worry about it. Let it flow, release judgment. At the end would be the best time to revise and refine. That's when you can like focus on refining your language and clarifying the message. But really for free writing, just let it go. You can think about the scene if you'd like to, set up the scene or describe the challenge you faced. This is where you can express your emotions. Were you scared, hopeful? You can try to start thinking about those ideas, reflecting maybe the strengths, how you use resilience, describing your journey. Maybe there's celebration. Not all of my poems end in celebration. Sometimes I leave a cliffhanger. You can do whatever you choose. It's your piece, whatever you'd like. So for the next maybe 10 minutes or so, we'll just do some free writing. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, so we're wrapping up that 10-minute writing session. At this point, maybe you've written some sentences, maybe you've written a lot, depending on how deeply you got into it. Often at this time, I have trouble stopping because I get really focused. I want to keep going and writing and editing and doing those things. But sometimes I feel like I've got it all out. I've got everything that I needed for that particular moment. So when you have your free write, at that point, you can keep it as it is. Maybe it's just a cathartic expression. Maybe it's something for you. You could also begin to move the form around. Maybe play with line breaks, play with punctuation. Maybe start taking things out that maybe don't mean what you want it to mean or convey. You can also do editing like that for yourself. You still don't have to share your poetry. You can always keep it for yourself. It doesn't ever have to be for anybody. But if it's something you're interested in sharing, then you can go and do that as well. So then, yeah, that can be a very powerful way to express yourself, is to embrace that process and see where words find you, and share with others to inspire them as well. Maybe we'll have time at the very end if we have like a couple minutes to share the pieces we wrote. Um, I just wanted to talk before we get to like the very end with like a tiny Q&A and maybe sharing some more pieces about a little bit more about what poetry can do. Poetry has this unique ability to promote inclusivity and understanding among families and children. I think it's an excellent way to begin thinking about building bridges, creating connections between different kinds of people, in the family setting, even like children to children, can help facilitate communication, provide a space for discussing difficult topics. And it's a way to also celebrate diverse cultures, languages, experiences. We in South Florida, we have multiple cultures from everywhere. So I think it's an interesting way to kind of bring that together, even just between families, thinking about ways to kind of promote understanding. Poetry can be used as storytelling. It can encourage children and families to write poems about their experiences. It's also important to think about valuing each child's unique perspective and serve as a medium for that. There's also the opportunity for collaborative poems. You can write poems together as a family or a group, as coworkers, as best friends. It can be a fun and inclusive activity. It could be something such as, each person writes a line or a stanza, and then you could collect those lines and put them together to, see what kind of different people will create. And also performance. Encouraging children to perform for in family settings or in safe settings where they're able to express themselves can be a huge confidence booster. It can help people feel, children feel seen in their community and in their family group. So you could host a poetry reading, or you're at the playground and sharing poems. Then that's what I did when I was a kid. I would share my poems during recess. So I didn't do much performing, but I did do some sharing when I was young. And it definitely was something that made me feel closer to my friends and the people that I shared poetry with. So at this point, we're winding down to the end. This would be a great time for maybe a couple questions if anyone has any. I put 2 questions that I get asked often. I don't know if anyone wants me to answer these, but if anyone has any questions, let me know. Poetry personally has impacted me tremendously for self-care and resilience. I think most of my poetry is a way for me to figure out how to move forward with my life, and to even sometimes give myself permission to move forward in tough situations or things that I'm not so sure about. It's a way for me to consider all the pieces of something in my life, so I kind of understand, how did I get to this point, and celebrate it, and sometimes lament and be a little sad about how things change, but how they transform in the end. And my biggest tips for writers to incorporate poetry into daily self-care practice is bring a little notebook with you. Right now, I do have a notebook that I'm physically writing inside of my bag, but if you have a cell phone, if you have technology, you can download Google Docs. I have Google Docs full of my writing. If I just have a little idea, I'll just put it in there. And sometimes that can really be helpful for me. Or Notes app, something like that. Or, put in a text message, text yourself a poem. So, you have it at your fingertips most of the time. Technology is everywhere. I'm on my laptop and my cell phone every day. So I can't say that I don't have access to write something down because I do. So those would be my tips would be: use the resources you have. If you have a crayon, use a crayon. You can write poetry with rocks in the ground. At the beach, you can use the stick and write some poems and let the waves wash over them. So there's an opportunity to write almost everywhere that you will be. So my takeaways for today: poetry is for everyone. I hope that you feel like you've been able to explore some of that feeling of determination, of self-care. It's a journey. Being a person is a constant self-discovery, and there's a way to discover more through poetry. Your voice matters. Other people's voices matter. It's important to take moments to listen as well as express ourselves. I think that's where there's the power to heal and to inspire each other. And stay resilient, stay determined, and keep on writing.
Thank you so much, Micah.
Thank you so much. If you're interested in anything else that I do, my Micah guides, my Miami guides on Instagram, I do have some poetry out there, and I also facilitate free, no-cost workshops every month with Miami Poetry Club. We also have an open mic that we do collaboration with Books and Books, and there are other advanced programs that we do as well, but we have no cost offering for the community, and it's incredible. So I hope to see some of you there as well.
Wonderful, thank you. And I just wanted to share a little quick kind of a fun way that I've heard of incorporating poetry too. If you are having trouble with your word banks or having trouble with your free whites is, and Micah, you probably know all about this, is book spine poetry. Is
Ooh.
taking things, so, looking at your bookshelf. I mean, I've heard this and I've done it before with my own bookshelf in writing groups that I've been a part of. They just say, like, take a look at your bookshelf, take a look at the titles on the spines of your books, and then just arrange those, like you can pull them in a theme, you can bring together things from multiple themes. But when you're at a loss for words, sometimes just take a look at the words around you and see how you can get creative with how you pull them together and how you utilize them. So that is kind of a fun way. I could see that being even like I'm sure librarians would probably like balk at this, but even at the library, kind of take a look, just make sure you put things back where they're supposed to be. But that was kind of a really fun exercise. And if you do, I think, we all kind of have like different types of things that we keep in our home. I could see it being done with like DVD spines, if people use DVDs still, things like that. Kind of give you a little bit of a theme and a starting point, and can be really fun.
I totally agree with you. I think some people get scared about plagiarizing when they look at other people's works, getting inspired. But poetry is, you're not going to plagiarize by writing a poem. There we go. What I was trying to say is, don't worry about plagiarizing. If you're inspired by a line, take that line, incorporate it into your poem. You can express how like you feel about it. Use those things like you're using like the spines of the book, like you suggested. Blackout poetry is something that is really fun and interesting to do. You can take photocopies of pages in books and mark out all the words that you don't want, and then you're left with a poem inside. So there's definitely ways to be inspired by other people's writing and using it for your own writing. And don't worry about plagiarizing. A great poetry teacher of mine was like, absolutely plagiarize, because it's not plagiarizing. You're not using, you're not going to do that if you're speaking from your experience when you're being inspired by lines. And actually, it's a known way that people write poetry. They write poetry after other people's works. So that's also something that you can do. If you're inspired by an entire poem, you can write your afterthought of reading that poem and how you're inspired. So yeah, thank you for that writing practice that you've done, because yeah, I think that's an excellent way to be inspired and find quick writing prompts wherever you go.
Dia, you've got your hand up. You're on mute.
Speaking of plagiarizing, I was basically writing about my move to Miami some 20 years ago. And I thought about a TV show that sort of summed it up in terms of the challenges. And some of you may be familiar with a show long ago called The Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Yes.
Okay, well, it's a little jingle song that introduces the show before it comes on. And the ending line of the jingle before she throws her head up in the air in the middle of Times Square is, "You're going to make it after all." And that line for me cinched, the challenges and the fantastic moving to Miami from an area and a home that I was in for more than 20 years. And it just really cinched, that line just really cinched how I felt. And I'm still happy about being in Miami.
I love that. That's awesome. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for your time today. You hit us right on the hour, Micah. I think from when we started. Thank you so much for coming on board and sharing the practice, and really the tool that poetry can be in our lives, looking at our own reflection, social and emotional wellness, like you said, the agency and determination as to where we go from here. So I can't think of a better way to have kicked off our So Ready speaker series. Like I mentioned at the beginning, for those of you who weren't here, this is the first of an ongoing series that will be hosted by YWCA as part of our So Ready initiative, supporting the social emotional wellness and racial equity, diversity, and inclusion of Miami-Dade County, in particular, service providers that serve youth and families, as well as anybody out here who is interested in it. And this is why we're making this available to the public. This series is generously sponsored by the Children's Trust, as are all of the offerings that we have in our So Ready initiative. So you've registered via email. We'll be sending you updates on the other things that you can take advantage of. Our next So Ready kind of mindfulness session, we have a streaming mindfulness session happening on Instagram with Trinity Church Peacemakers on Tuesday at 4 p.m. So if you follow us at YWCA South FL on Instagram, Kyle, how long is it? Is it an hour? Is it 30 minutes? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yes, it's an hour.
It's a 1 hour
45.
mindfulness practice. You know, we all can use it, I think, in the middle of the week. I will say sometimes I look silly in my office, you know, practicing these things. It is a physical and a response and a physical practice that has much further reaching impacts, I think, in our bodies and in our minds and in our lives. So we invite you to join us and share. It is open to anybody and everyone who wants to check it out. Thank you all. Thank you, Micah. I'm gonna give another last round of applause to Micah and for you all for being here, and have a happy rest of your Thursday.